solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with everything we have to do with, look, if...
Fox News host Laura Ingraham has criticized President Biden's mental state and has revealed some covered-up secrets.
Just as overall healthy and just as capable of doing the job as he was before the debate with President Trump.
Anyone who witnessed the presidential debate knows it was bad for Joe Biden, and it was painful to watch him struggle to recall words and facts.
More Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look.
As a result, Ingraham claims that Biden is a habitual liar, both about minor and significant matters. But it is even more damaging that his campaign is making efforts to deny what many Americans saw. Logically, if his mental health is fine, he should take a test to prove it. Not doing so only suggests he's hiding something potentially serious. What is the media trying to cover up? Why did a top Parkinson's disease specialist meet with the president's personal physician earlier this year?
8 White House visits by the Parkinson's expert. You've never examined President Biden. From my knowledge, you never even spoke.
Join us as we look at how Laura Ingraham just revealed the last and the most terrifying secret we are not supposed to know. Laura Ingraham and her controversial nature. While Ingraham may have risen to prominence at Fox News today, her media career began in the mid-1990s when she became a commentator for CBS and hosted the MSNBC program Watch It. She gained wider recognition as a host on cable news and as a frequent guest on various talk shows. Ingraham joined Fox News Channel in 2007 and became a permanent fixture on the network.
Oh, another reason there must be no deal. The immigration issue is a huge drag on Democrats. Finally got their attention.
She is best known for hosting The Ingraham Angle, which debuted in October 2017. The show features Ingraham's conservative viewpoints on politics, culture, and current events, and it has become one of the most watched programs on the network. But before anyone becomes famous, their upbringing and background often play a big role. So what does her background have to do with her prominent voice in conservative media? The answers will blow your mind. Laura Ann Ingraham was born on June 19, 1963, in Glastonbury, Connecticut. She grew up in a middle-class family and attended Glastonbury High School. Ingraham went on to earn a Bachelor of Arts degree from Dartmouth College in 1985. Following her undergraduate studies, she attended the University of Virginia School of Law, where she served as a notes editor for the Virginia Law Review. She graduated with a Juris Doctor degree in 1991. After law school, Ingraham clerked for Judge Ralph K. Winter Jr. of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. She later worked as a speechwriter in the Reagan administration, as the domestic policy advisor, and then as a clerk for U.S. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. She later worked as a speechwriter in the Reagan administration, as the domestic policy advisor, and then as a clerk for U.S. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. Ingraham is known for her sharp critiques of the mainstream media, which she often accuses of liberal bias. She frequently calls out what she sees as unfair coverage of conservative figures and issues.
But the debates showed us a lot about this Democrat Party. Where they are now, where Obama, in some circles, was considered too moderate. They didn't even mention Bill Clinton.
In 2018, Laura Ingraham faced several controversies. She insulted NBA stars LeBron James and Kevin Durant by saying, "It's always unwise to seek political advice from someone who gets paid $100 million a year to bounce a ball," and told them to shut up and dribble.
And it's always unwise to seek political advice from someone who gets paid $100 million a year to bounce a ball.
In June 2018, she defended Trump's migrant child detention camps by comparing them to summer camps. In late 2019, during Trump's impeachment, Ingraham found her stride by using her legal background to argue that the impeachment trial was a sham. She later dismissed the coronavirus, calling Democrats the pandemic party and accusing the media of being panic pushers. Despite these controversies, her audience remained strong. In February 2020, she had 3.6 million viewers, the highest ever for a female cable news host. Revelations by Ingraham about Joe Biden. This is the collapse of the great Biden cover-up. was the title of the news article where Laura Ingraham stated that Special Counsel Robert Hur's released report portrayed Joe Biden as mentally confused and forgetful. According to Ingraham, Democrats criticized the report, calling it flatly wrong, inappropriate, and gratuitous. One Democrat asserted that Biden's mental acuity was as good as it had been over the years. In response, Ingraham urged the DOJ to release the entire transcript of Biden's 5-hour interview with the special counsel's office, arguing that Americans should be able to see if Hur's characterization of Biden as a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory was accurate. Ingraham claimed that the transcript not only confirmed Biden's dishonesty about the classified documents in his garage and his debilitated mental state, but also revealed that the situation was worse than previously thought. She recalled that Democrats had criticized her for allegedly asking Biden about his son's death, and noting that Biden did not remember when Beau Biden died. Biden himself responded with outrage, questioning Hur's right to raise the issue.
I could not make that determination without assessing the president's state of mind. For that reason, I had to consider the president's memory and overall mental state.
However, Ingraham pointed out that, according to the transcript, Hur did not mention Beau Biden's death. Instead, Biden brought it up while being questioned about where he kept work-related papers after leaving the vice presidency. Biden asked if it was in 2017 or 2018, and then mentioned that during that time frame, his son had either been deployed or was dying. Biden then rambled about the 2016 election and finally asked when Beau died before two of his aides clarified that it was in 2015. Laura Ingraham explained that when Biden was asked if it was in 2015 that his son died, his aide interjected to clarify that it was May of 2015. Ingraham expressed her initial thought that Dr. Jill Biden should be ashamed for putting her husband and the country through this ordeal. She also criticized Democrats and the media for attacking Special Counsel Hur, believing that everyone would think Biden was fine and blaming her for the situation. Ingraham accused the Democrats of covering up Biden's mental state, mocking their claim that this version of Biden was intellectually and analytically the best ever. She noted that even the generally pro-Biden Axios observed Biden's repeated mental lapses during the interviews with the special counsel. Biden had confused dates, asked if he was still vice president, and incorrectly stated when Trump was elected. Axios also reported that Biden struggled to find the words for the fax machine twice on the same day. Ingraham urged listeners to disregard the Democrats' attempts to deflect from the facts about Biden's conduct and diminishing mental state. She stated that by holding classified documents in unsecured locations over decades, Biden violated 18 U.S. Code Section 1924. However, Hur chose not to prosecute Biden, believing it unlikely that a jury would unanimously convict him. Ingraham emphasized that Biden was never exonerated in the report, despite the Democrats' claims to the contrary. She concluded by summarizing the Democratic narrative, that Biden acted responsibly, cooperated fully, and the decision not to pursue criminal charges was straightforward. Laura Ingraham discussed how some Democrats claimed that the Hur report completely exonerated President Biden. They asserted that the special counsel's lengthy and expensive investigation resulted in a full exoneration. However, Ingraham highlighted that during the hearings, Hur clarified he did not exonerate Biden. She noted how Democratic Representative Jayapal insisted that Hur had exonerated Biden, despite Hur repeatedly stating that his report did not conclude Biden was innocent. But it gets even more fascinating. Ingraham mentioned how Congressman Darrell Issa emphasized this point, asking Hur directly if he concluded that Biden was outright innocent. Hur responded that his report did not reflect such a conclusion. Instead, Hur concluded that he would not prevail at trial, hence deciding not to pursue charges against Biden. Ingraham criticized the Democrats for ignoring Hur's statements and pretending they didn't hear his actual words. She pointed out that the White House responded by describing the transcript of Biden's interview as offering a nuanced view, which she found amusingly creative. Summarizing the situation, Ingraham stated that Biden had willfully retained classified documents, a conduct dating back 40 years to his Senate days. She referenced a part of the report discussing a conversation between Biden and his ghostwriter, Mark Zwanitzer, where Biden expressed concern about potentially classified notebook entries. Ingraham asserted that there was substantial evidence indicating Biden knew he possessed classified materials and generally knew where they were stored. She concluded by criticizing Democrats for their lack of concern over Biden's actions, contrasting it with their previous criticisms of Trump's handling of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. Laura Ingraham expressed her belief that the Democrats' claims of concern over national security and adherence to norms and laws were insincere, describing it as a farce. She argued that they never cared about issues like Hillary Clinton's private email server or her destroyed emails. According to Ingraham, the Democrats' primary concern is maintaining power. Ingraham posed a second question raised by Her's initial report, whether Biden is mentally fit to be president. Troll. These claims raise certain questions that remain unanswered. Is there any argument or evidence against Ingraham's claims? Let's find out. Evidence regarding Biden's mental capacity. President Biden is facing calls to undergo cognitive testing and release the results following his disastrous debate last month and a series of reports about his apparent decline in recent months. Concerns were further heightened when public records revealed that a neurologist specializing in Parkinson's disease had visited the White House. The administration clarified that this physician has been a neurology consultant for the White House medical unit for more than a decade. Fortunately, President Biden shows no signs of Alzheimer's disease. At news conferences, he references recent events and efficiently forms new memories. He speaks slowly and occasionally pauses to find words, similar to others with benign age-associated memory impairment. These issues are compounded by a chronic speech impediment. Biden has struggled with stuttering since childhood, and remnants of this condition remain evident in his speech. However, these word hesitations and the mild stutter do affect his public speaking. David J. Stone, a geriatrician, believes Biden's political opponents and the uninformed exploit these traits, along with stereotypes about older individuals, to create a false narrative about his intellectual impairment. Actuarial tables indicate that the 81-year-old president's life expectancy extends nearly 8 years, surpassing the length of a second term. He receives excellent health care, has no major chronic illnesses, and was declared healthy, active, and fit for duty at his recent physical at Walter Reed Military Medical Center. This suggests that Biden is likely to exceed the actuarial estimate. Given his overall health and lack of current cognitive impairment, he would likely complete a second term with stable cognition. David further stated that all candidates for political office in the United States should be evaluated based on their accomplishments and capabilities rather than their age. Seniors may be the last minority whose inherent traits are subject to ridicule and stereotyping. He expressed that if the American people disagree with President Biden's policies and seek change, they should support his opponent. However, in the absence of valid evidence of true cognitive impairment, their judgment should not be swayed by ageist stereotypes. He concludes by saying that Biden and the American political process deserve better. Ingraham claims about Biden's lies. President Biden's health concerns have been regarded as the biggest political cover-up that we have ever seen. A poll reveals that an increasing number of U.S. adults question whether 81-year-old President Joe Biden has the memory and sharpness needed for the job, making his State of the Union address a crucial test for a potential second term. According to Ingraham, this situation means at least 2 of the 5 people deciding how trillions of tax dollars are spent are no longer capable of working full-time, both showing clear symptoms of serious physical and cognitive decline. She remarked that while this is always a difficult situation in any family, the authority and power they wield make it even more troubling. Of course, as Ingraham has noted previously, the Democrats will only dump Biden if they see him as a political liability, which they haven't yet. They prefer having a puppet like Biden as president because he's easily manipulated. What does having such a kind of leader mean for Americans? It would be an unpleasant situation. Additionally, Ingraham states that when Biden became president, he lied about easily checkable things like the price of gasoline. Neither McConnell nor Biden should be in their current positions, and given what we know about the foreign money trail, Biden is likely compromised not just by his health, but by the millions his family has made overseas. Being corrupt is bad, but being corrupt and senile is even worse. When Biden took office, gas was only $2.39 per gallon, but due to his anti-oil and gas policies, it hit highs of over $5. He also lies about the deficit, claiming he reduced it by $1.7 trillion, while his spending spree increased it. In a bold claim, Ingraham mentioned that the lies never stopped and that she could spend the entire hour of the Ingraham angle cataloging them. The lies about the border are legendary. A Gallup survey says 70% of Americans, including 55% of Democrats, see it as a crisis. Biden's catch-and-release policies have resulted in approximately 7 million illegal crossings, according to one congressman, and there were 144,000 encounters at the border in just the month of June. Human smuggling is now a $1 billion a year business, benefiting the cartels. Moreover, one of the most egregious lies is about to be exposed for the world to see, according to Ingraham. Biden's Commerce Secretary, Gina Raimondo, became the latest in a long line of senior Biden administration officials to visit Beijing. After this 4-day trip, it's clear that the White House is far more enthusiastic about cooperating with the Chinese Communist Party than they ever have been or will be with the GOP. Hunter Biden lost another attorney who quit rather than being misplaced. This adds to the scrutiny of Biden's administration, especially with the Democrats facing the risk of declining support from Black Americans. Raimondo's visit to Beijing established working groups and announced a tourism summit. But the angle suggests that if Trump or another Republican wins enough states to secure 270 electoral votes, the system could implode. More strikingly, Laura Ingraham suggests that the American government prioritizes relations with China over supporting the working class and Trump voters. She argues that policies enabling China's growth and technological advancements were deliberate and will continue if Trump is not re-elected. Ingraham criticizes Biden's administration, especially Gina Raimondo's visit to Beijing, for maintaining engagement with China despite the BRICS summit's goal to surpass the US and the G20. She claims today's Democrats disrespect their base's intelligence, particularly regarding issues affecting Black voters. The implication is that the current administration's focus on China could undermine American workers and further alienate key voter groups. In a nation where the unemployment rate is at 4.10%, compared to 4.00% last month and 3.60% last year, this poses a major concern. But it gets even more complicated. With Democrats now focusing on trade secrets protection with China, the concern is raised about whether Democrats would ever give Republicans the benefit of the doubt, as they seem to do with China. Democracy, according to this view, only works if enough mail-in ballots and early votes can be cast to secure a win for Biden. This perspective criticizes the administration's reliance on strained legal arguments and fringe theories. The press is seen as complicit in fanning racial division, with instances like Eugene Robinson's article in The Washington Post being cited as examples of linking Trump supporters to racists. The administration's climate change deals with China are considered a joke, and the press is accused of spinning China's commitment to regular conversations as a substantial step in restoring trust. China's goal, according to this perspective, is to supplant America on the global stage, beginning with the process of de-dollarization, which would harm the middle class and end America's superpower status. The call is for citizens to come together and engage in critical dialogue about the country's direction, challenging the administration's decisions and leadership. Now here's the reason for the assertion earlier given. According to Ingraham, globalists aren't concerned about the working class or America's decline. They're more worried about China's economic issues. The Biden administration, particularly Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo, seems more eager to work with the Chinese Communist Party than with the GOP. There are calls from figures like New York Times columnist Bret Stephens to lift Trump tariffs on Chinese imports, citing American economic generosity, despite the growing trade deficit with China. The administration's approach is seen as fostering greater dependence on China, potentially enriching it and increasing its global threat. Ingraham argues that the establishment's solution is always more engagement with China, regardless of its actions. This even has greater implications for America's democracy. Democracy, according to the critics, only functions if enough mail-in ballots and early votes are cast to ensure a win for the incumbent president. This is viewed as a convenient strategy to overpower populist support. Concerns are growing, leading to strained legal arguments and fringe theories that manipulate the Constitution. The term rigged election is avoided, leading to a broader avoidance of similar phrases. Ingraham criticizes the liberal viewpoint, suggesting that measures like reparations, CRT, and higher taxes won't help Black Americans, using California's struggles as an example. She argues that such rhetoric promotes racial separation rather than integration, citing past comments from a New York City council member. Ingraham believes the Biden administration's failures are evident across the economy and border security, with racial division being the primary tactic left to rally support. She warns of the potential consequences of America's involvement in Middle Eastern conflicts, highlighting the importance of understanding the costs of such involvement. But is Ingraham the only one with such claims about Biden? Your mind will be blown by the answer. Other opinions and claims on Biden's capacity. Ingraham is not the only one who believes Biden is a liar and has something to hide. According to Mike Gonzalez, the media are complicit in President Biden's habitual dishonesty by covering for him rather than exposing his falsehoods. Even when acknowledging his tendency to embellish, as the New York Times did in 2022, they excuse his behavior as merely adorning reality. Biden's lies have ranged from oddball claims, such as his Uncle Bosie being eaten by cannibals in Papua New Guinea during Woe, when Ambrose J. Finnegan actually died in a plane crash, to more personal fabrications about his education, personal experiences, and background. For example, he has falsely claimed to have graduated in the top half of his law school class, that his house burned down with his wife in it, and that he grew up in the Puerto Rican community. Biden has also falsely accused former President Trump of leaving behind a 9% inflation rate when it was actually 1.4%, and has made other misleading statements about Trump and his policies. His falsehoods can sometimes be oddly specific and unverifiable, adding to concerns about his mental state. Particularly troubling is Biden's repeated and misleading use of his son Beau's death to gain sympathy, falsely claiming Beau died in Iraq when he actually died of cancer in Maryland. This was used to deflect blame for the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal in 2021, which saw 13 soldiers killed. Moreover, in a debate with Trump on June 27th, Biden lied about military deaths, claiming none occurred during his term, and made false claims about unemployment rates, endorsements, and Trump's statements during the pandemic. Despite these lies, Biden claims to be a truth-teller, a narrative the media supports, contrasting him with Trump. A CNN senior reporter's comment that the ex-president got away with a torrent of lies is frequently cited to bolster this narrative.
American leadership is completely absent. It's just all posturing. It's like people like Nikki Haley. You just wonder, like, how does an advanced civilization promote someone like Nikki Haley to a position of authority? It's like, what? That would be the appropriate response, but everyone's so intimidated to be like, oh, she's a strong woman. She's so transparently weak.
Tucker Carlson is known for regularly exposing policy lapses of the Biden administration, expressing particular concern about the fragile state of democracy in the United States. He also regularly sheds light on Donald Trump's controversial policies, especially the border policy. Just a few moments ago, he made shocking revelations about a top contender in the 2024 presidential election. What are the latest revelations made by Carlson, and how will they affect the ongoing presidential race? Join us as we examine the curious secrets of a self-made liberal Republican. State of American democracy. Tucker Carlson believes our democracy is under internal and external siege. For instance, there are signs of concerted efforts both within the United States and across the broader Western world to block the reemergence of Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential election. However, Trump still possesses a potent force against his foes, his dedicated supporters. While they may not hold the most influential offices today, they have an essential role in the battle for the destiny of the United States. Carlson also warns that he'd always heard claims that each election is the most important, but this time, it genuinely feels true. That's not all. America is at a delicate moment, and if we fail to act now, the fate of the next generation is at stake. According to Carlson, over 40% of the voters in the Republican primary might not even be Republicans. They could be liberals. Apart from that, Carlson has expressed doubts about the integrity of the American electronic voting system, and he's not the first to express worries about the U.S. electronic voting system.
The use of electronic voting machines during the 2020 election was controversial in some states, despite no evidence of irregularities. Now, several viral tweets claim Arizona has banned using these machines for the 2024 election.
Several key areas. Some of the critical challenges include security, reliability, transparency, and accessibility. The primary risk is cyber vulnerability. Security risks are a significant worry, as electronic voting machines could potentially be hacked or tampered with, leading to altered vote counts or manipulated election outcomes. Reliability issues also arise, with fears of technical glitches or malfunctions resulting in incorrect vote tallies, broken machines on election day, or lost votes. Transparency is another critical issue. With a paper trail, verifying the accuracy of the vote count or conducting audits and recounts becomes easier, undermining public trust in election results. The following warning is terrifying. Carlson expresses concerns about the influence and control of private companies that produce voting machines. He believes these companies may be able to manipulate our electoral system. As a solution, he suggested reverting to the way we did a few years ago. Everyone would vote with an ID in person on the same day, just like when you buy alcohol or board a plane. You'd cast your vote on paper, manually, without electronic voting machines, drop boxes, or absentee ballots. The poll workers would likely be familiar faces from your neighborhood, not distant employees from big tech companies. Well, Iowa did just that in January with their caucuses, kicking off the 2024 presidential race. It felt natural and orderly, unlike elections in other places. The results were interesting. Donald Trump secured 51% of the vote, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis got 21%, and Nikki Haley received 19%. Essentially, Trump won by a large margin. In a traditional voting setup, citizens would select the candidates themselves without judges dictating who can be on the ballot. Once the votes are cast, no one can legally halt the counting, ensuring results within hours and boosting confidence in their accuracy. Now the plot thickens. Stay tuned. Trump's victory in Iowa.
Well, I want to thank everybody. This has been some period of time, and most importantly, we want to thank the great people of Iowa. Thank you. We love you all.
Last January's Iowa caucuses were a stunning landslide. Trump dominated the state much like the Vikings raided the Irish coast, leaving nothing but ruins. Chris Wallace seemed visibly shaken, and other channels scrambled for explanations. NBC News noted the significance of this unexpected outcome. Trump not only won, he did so by a historic margin. He led by about 30 points, doubling the previous record set by Bob Dole in 1988. This overwhelming victory proved the deep-seated anxieties some have about Trump's influence. There is a strong, often hysteric reaction from certain groups toward Donald Trump. It would be fascinating to explain the underlying reasons for this fear. After Donald Trump's emergence, NBC News blamed the white Christian voters as the source of the problem. Joe Biden also made a surprising comment. He said whites are the real issue, which sparked considerable debate. At this moment, millions of devout Christian whites are purportedly flooding across our borders illegally, bringing their blonde children and prayer books. This is causing disruptions in our schools, hospitals, and cities, driving up the cost of living and increasing crime rates. It's seen as an invasion by Christian whites. What you are about to hear is revealing. This sentiment isn't restricted to NBC. Joe Biden's entire re-election campaign appears to center on opposing these Christian whites. In a speech to a black church in Charleston, Biden explicitly blamed whites for the country's problems. This rhetoric, mirroring Robert Mugabe's strategy, suggests a deep-seated hatred towards whites, even as their life expectancy declines faster than any other group in America, and they are poised to become a minority in the nation their ancestors founded. And don't be surprised by Biden's rhetoric. Democrats have been making such statements for years because they apparently work for them politically and reflect their true beliefs. They show no signs of stopping. However, they now face a pressing problem: how to stop Donald Trump and his predominantly white Christian base. This challenge has been made worse by the recent election results. Thankfully, they have a strategy in place, and that strategy is Nikki Haley. The prospects of Nikki Haley. The idea of a Nikki Haley presidency may be chaotic. Tucker Carlson strongly opposes it as an undesirable option for the average person. One of the most fervent supporters of this notion is New Hampshire's neoliberal governor Chris Sununu, who has been campaigning for Haley in multiple states. Sununu, who receives little attention outside New England due to his lack of charisma, which makes him a poor TV guest, is probably the Republican officeholder who dislikes Republicans the most. Hear this shocker. Do you know that he complained about the high number of white people in New Hampshire just a few years ago? Sununu shares more similarities with Joe Biden than with the residents of Coos County in his state. Chris Sununu describes Nikki Haley as the natural leader of conservative Republicans.
Because he knows Nikki is gaining traction. He knows she's the only one with momentum. So he's panicked that if he doesn't galvanize and spur up the anger amongst his base,
claiming she has her finger on their pulse. Tucker Carlson noted a shift in their narrative, where those who once depicted Biden as a moderate now try to portray Nikki Haley as a conservative alternative. Despite media claims of her growing popularity in Iowa, Haley underperformed, finishing third by a small margin. This result denies the media the opportunity to present her as the definitive alternative to Donald Trump. However, the media isn't giving up on promoting Nikki Haley. A Nikki Haley presidency, while unpopular with most people, is being pushed by a small, well-funded group of determined activists, keeping the possibility persistently on the horizon. The following battle in the presidential race took place in New Hampshire just a week after the Iowa convention, and surprisingly again, Donald Trump beat all other contenders. Trump's chances initially looked small due to coordinated efforts and substantial financial backing for Nikki Haley. However, a shocking revelation about Haley's fiancé is just around the corner. According to disclosed figures, Haley's campaign spent around $3 million per week in New Hampshire, whereas Ron DeSantis appears to have spent nothing there. Notably, much of Haley's funding isn't coming from Republicans or conservatives, but from dedicated Democratic partisans. For instance, Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn and an advocate for various progressive causes, is a big supporter and financier of Haley. Hoffman, who also funded E. Jean Carroll's case against Donald Trump, is clear evidence of the unconventional sources of Haley's campaign contributions. Reid Hoffman is actually a prominent Democratic megadonor, and he significantly contributed to Democratic causes in 2020, including a $1 million donation to David Brock's American Bridge PAC, which targets Republican candidates. Hoffman's financial support also extends to California Governor Gavin Newsom and other like-minded figures. Interestingly, this election cycle, Hoffman is backing Nikki Haley, funding one of the most blatant propaganda efforts in recent memory. The same people who previously marketed Joe Biden as a moderate and genial grandfather aiming to restore normalcy are now portraying Nikki Haley as a principled conservative who needs to replace him. Nikki Haley's foreign policy blunders. Despite the growing domestic issues facing the average American, Nikki Haley has increasingly advocated for more aid to Ukraine. It may shock you to know that her support for Ukraine aid surpasses congressional appropriations. She wants them to send more and more unlimited cash flow into a war that has no end in sight. This has brought a spotlight on her foreign policy priorities. In a tweet during the turmoil of the George Floyd protests, she spoke about the personal and painful nature of Floyd's death for many. However, some critics have interpreted her words as suggesting a collective responsibility to feel the pain, questioning whether such sentiments extend to other contexts, such as allocating funds to foreign entities with questionable leaders and corrupt oligarchs. Here's the twist. To be honest, there was a point in which many Republicans supported increasing financial aid to Ukraine. However, given the evidence of the outcomes, they have all grown reservations now. As the crisis unfolds, the United States and its taxpayers may bear a significant financial burden, exceeding $500 billion. This means we need to have a self-reflection. Let's sit for a minute. What have been the returns on such investments so far? The results include a generation deeply affected, extensive destruction, and a weaker, poorer America. Despite this, Nikki Haley advocates for continued funding, surpassing congressional allocations, even at the expense of other vital programs.
I worked with Boeing to get them to build planes in South Carolina. 8,000 jobs. Fantastic win for our state.
This stance raises questions about its reasonableness and conservatism. But there is another hidden truth that might be influencing her stance. Nikki is said to have close connections to the weapons industry. Despite Nikki Haley's considerable approval ratings among self-proclaimed conservatives, observers like Tucker Carlson question the authenticity of this support, and they sense there is an ongoing media manipulation to work against Donald Trump in favor of Haley. He views Haley as genuine and relatable, contrasting her with the perceived phoniness of politics. Carlson also praises Haley's intuitive understanding of Republican voters' concerns, suggesting she operates from a place of sincerity and shared values. However, he subtly mentions concerns about her ties to the defense industry, implying a potential conflict of interest. The underlying question was, did New Hampshire Republican voters trust Carlson's assessment of Haley's authenticity? Well, you have the answer. The New Hampshire Republican presidential primary was held on January 23, 2024, and won once again by former President Donald Trump. Trump polled 54.35% of the total votes, while Haley went home with just 43.28%. But support for Haley goes beyond campaign donations from the opposition camp.
After South Carolina, the hours after that, we raised $1 million. I'll tell you that we have over 300,000 donors, grassroots donors from across the country. 95% of those are $200 or less. The energy is real, the excitement is real. Nikki's message is resonating, and that's what she's fighting for.
Wait for a surprising revelation just ahead: the media manipulation and Nikki Haley. Indeed, a lot of people supported Nikki Haley's purported conservatism, especially considering her sustained high approval ratings among self-made conservatives. However, Tucker Carlson argues that this popularity stems from extensive promotion in media outlets that cater to conservative audiences, such as the Wall Street Journal. Despite this portrayal, Carlson contends that Haley's political ideology aligns more closely with neoliberalism rather than conservatism. Consider her stance on issues like illegal immigration and her support for policies like amnesty, which is out of step with mainstream Republican views. Additionally, Carlson hints at potential financial incentives from individuals like Reid Hoffman, suggesting a correlation between Haley's positions and the financial support she receives. Another issue we have to mention is bipartisanship, particularly regarding the responses to the unrest following George Floyd's death. While many Republican primary voters didn't endorse the rioting and looting, Nikki Haley's stance appeared to be different, which Tucker Carlson found particularly interesting. He also investigated other aspects of Haley's political history, such as her previous support for establishing a vaccine registry and her alignment with certain aspects of the Green New Deal, suggesting potential deviations from conservative principles. Moreover, Carlson raises concerns about Haley's approach to climate change, framing it as a national security issue and implying a willingness to accept climate refugees, which he portrays as contrary to traditional conservative positions. Promoters of this climate refugees argue that due to our excessive energy consumption and lifestyle choices, we bear responsibility for displacing people from their native lands, thus creating a moral imperative to provide them with housing, healthcare, and support upon arrival in our country. That's not all. Nikki Haley also seems to endorse this perspective, which Tucker Carlson finds divergent from the views of most Republican primary voters, who consider it irrational and detrimental. He compares this stance to authoritarian regimes' suppression of free speech, rather than a reflection of constitutional principles. Despite this, he acknowledges the possibility that some Republican voters might be influenced by such narratives, raising questions about their commitment to conservative values. Tucker Carlson doesn't believe that Nikki Haley could ever win the Republican presidential nomination. However, He said the only scenario where Nikki Haley becomes the Republican nominee hinges on factors like the absence of alternative candidates or potential legal issues for Donald Trump. We are still waiting for sentencing after Trump's conviction, so no one really knows whether the party nomination will eventually fall back to Haley, especially if Trump is sentenced to prison on July 12th.
Each of the 34 counts that Trump was found guilty of carries up to 4 years in prison.
However, Trump has also vowed to appeal and downturn what he calls a kangaroo trial and political persecution. Tucker Carlson suggests that political realities are much more than just left or right ideologies, likening them to a military operation or a war. He expresses concerns about international relations, particularly mentioning Putin's lack of respect for Biden and the escalating nuclear rhetoric. Carlson also questions Biden's ability to remain in the race, highlighting uncertainties about his viability in light of his health and advanced age. We are now getting to the epic moment of the video: America's border policy. Trump has been criticizing Biden's open border policy, and he claims that stricter border policies will unify the nation. He also argues that the policy not only jeopardizes national security, but also strains resources due to a reported surge in illegal border crossings. On the other hand, the White House defends Biden's open arms policies as humanitarian and essential in addressing the border crisis. Despite this, Trump and his supporters maintain their call for stricter border control, giving priority to the security and integrity of national borders. As tensions between Trump and Biden persist regarding immigration policy, the future of the national approach to immigration remains uncertain. Trump voices strong opposition to the open door policy, particularly concerning the admission of individuals from countries like China, Iran, Yemen, the Congo, and Syria, which may pose security risks. In the midst of escalating political tensions surrounding U.S. borders, Trump's criticisms show the lack of control and border security under Biden's leadership. If Trump eventually gets nominated as the candidate of the Republican Party, we can expect a contentious debate on the future of American immigration policy. Trump claims the open border will make Biden face significant challenges in securing reflection, let alone serving another term. Despite widespread dissatisfaction with President Biden's leadership, it will be tough for the Democratic Party to replace him due to concerns about Vice President Kamala Harris's popularity. Trump continues to express discontent with Biden's presidency, mainly focusing on immigration policies and border security. As the Biden administration shapes immigration reform, Trump's influence remains a prominent factor in shaping political dialogue in the United States. This ongoing debate mirrors broader divisions within the nation. Trump has even called the immigration problem Biden migrant crime. This terminology shows his belief that the influx of migrants poses a threat to the country. Nikki's ideological contradictions will surprise you. Here it is: a confused Republican. As mentioned earlier, Haley has tried to set herself apart from other conservatives in Republican politics. However, some may view this as a betrayal of the core tenets of the party. Back in 2017, she was a vocal critic of certain aspects of Trump's immigration policies, which she decried as inhumane. She particularly opposed the practice of separating immigrant children from their parents. While she supports immigration reform like many Republicans, she offers a more moderate option for voters who are dissatisfied with Biden's policies, and she rejects the harsh approaches of Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis. Carlson views her as a little indecisive, or a typical forum shopper who tries a little here and a little there. Remember that she took a similar middle ground approach while discussing abortion rights. While she expressed her pro-life stance, she opposed a federal ban, which is a departure from the tenets of her party and fellow Republican candidates. As the former governor of South Carolina, she enacted several abortion restrictions, limiting access for many women and proudly identifying as unapologetically pro-life. However, she believes a federal ban is impractical, arguing it would never pass in the Senate and would only deepen partisan divisions. Haley also rejects the idea of punishing women for having abortions. There are two possible explanations for her approach. It is either she is genuinely trying to differentiate herself from other Republican candidates, or she's simply guilty of anti-party stances. Take, for instance, during a debate in August 2023, she earned the admiration of youths nationwide with even some Georgetown University students supporting her. After the GOP debate on August 23rd, she received the highest ratings among the contenders. Carlson believes that the reason for her sudden popularity among young voters back then was an attempt to cast herself as a liberal Republican. Political experts have noted that as Gen Z becomes eligible to vote, they tend to favor candidates with progressive values, such as abortion rights, environmental protections, and social change for minorities. Haley's attempt to cast herself as progressive as Biden and other Republicans appears to be an attempt to target these younger generations at the expense of her confessed political party. But it's not a news. Here's why. Nikki Haley had been a middle ground player for a long time. During the 2016 presidential election, she never wanted to vote for either her party or the Democrats. Back then, she said she reluctantly cast her vote for Trump. "This election has been deeply unsettling," she remarked in late October 2016. "It's been an embarrassment for both parties. This isn't what the country deserves, but it's our reality." She admitted she wasn't a fan of either Trump or Clinton, the woman who had initially inspired her political career. Trump responded with a tweet saying, "The people of South Carolina are embarrassed by Nikki Haley," to which she replied, "Bless your heart." Do you think Haley is a loyal Republican? Is Haley coming back for the presidency? There are no details of the response of Trump's competitors for the Republican presidential nomination to news of his conviction. As Trump awaits sentencing on July 12th, the question that lingers in many people's minds is, what will happen next? Could Trump go to jail? And what will the reaction of contenders such as Nikki Haley be? Haley officially suspended her presidential campaign around March 2024, but she did not endorse Donald Trump. But that's not all. She wished him well and encouraged him to reach out to her supporters, emphasizing the importance of unity within the party. We can safely predict that Trump's got Haley's back as of today. In fact, a few days ago at the Hudson Institute, Haley said that as a voter, she prioritizes a president who will support allies, hold enemies accountable, and secure the border without excuses. She emphasized the need for a president who supports capitalism and freedom and who understands the importance of reducing debt. Haley acknowledged that Trump has not been perfect on these policies, a point she has made many times, but she described Biden's presidency as catastrophic. Consequently, she declared that she would be voting for Trump. Remember that Nikki told Trump to reach out to her supporters while suspending her campaign. She restated this once again. She said, "I stand by what I said in my suspension speech. Trump would be smart to reach out to the millions of people who voted for him and continue to support."
You didn't believe she was dead?
For a long time. I just refused to accept that she was gone. Part of, she would never do this to us, but also part of, maybe this is all part of a plan. Quite a severe head injury, but she was very much still alive on the back seat. And those people that caused the accident, instead of helping, were taking photographs of her dying on the back seat. And then those photographs made their way back to news desks in this country.
Princess Diana, the people's princess, stepped into the royal spotlight with her marriage to Prince Charles.
Ostensibly no, but given the fact that the Princess of Wales believes that Prince Charles's friendship with another woman, Camilla Parker Bowles, has cast a long shadow over that marriage, must be considered when you look at the failure of this 11-year union.
Despite her doubts about the hasty proposal, she saw it as a way to escape her troubled family. But the royal life was anything but a fairy tale. Her marriage to Charles brought to light many secrets, and she faced unkind treatment from the royal family. Distraught by infidelity and cruelty, Diana sought revenge, only to tragically die in a car crash in 1997. Now, decades later, her son is revealing secrets about Charles. Why is he breaking his silence? Join us as we look into the secrets leaked by Princess Diana's son about King Charles' Princess Diana's early life and career. Princess Diana's marriage to the royal family and the controversies that trailed her life after brought her to the limelight. But she had quite an eventful life, even before then. Let's delve into when and how it all started. Diana was born on the 1st of July, 1961, to Edward John Spencer, the Viscount Althorp, and Frances Ruth Burke Roche, who later became known as the Honorable Frances Shand Kidd. She was born as Diana Frances Spencer, and later became Lady Diana Spencer in 1975.
Above all, we give thanks for the life of a woman I'm so proud to be able to call my sister. The unique, the complex, the extraordinary and irreplaceable Diana, whose beauty, both internal and external, will never be extinguished from our minds.
After her father inherited the Earl Spencer title, her connection to the royal family is evident in her place of birth. Princess Diana was born at Park House, a home that her parents rented on Queen Elizabeth II's estate in Sandringham, England.
The former home of Elizabeth Head Gardner on her Sandringham estate can be rented for about $400 a night next February for a minimum of 3 nights.
The royal family frequently holidayed at the neighboring Sandringham house.
London. Queen Mary left Marlborough House for Sandringham, where the royal Christmas was to be spent as a family party.
And Diana played with Princes Andrew and Edward. With such a noble background, how did Diana's early life lead to her eventual fate and controversial life? Get ready for the most epic moment of the video. Diana was the youngest daughter of her parents, and she had 2 older sisters, Jane Fellows and Sarah McCorquodale, and a younger brother, Charles Spencer, 9th Earl Spencer. She had another brother, John, but he died in infancy a year before Diana was born.
From her mother's devastating loss of a baby boy, she was never allowed to hold her first son.
Both of her grandmothers, Cynthia Spencer and Ruth Roche, were ladies-in-waiting to Queen Mother Elizabeth. After losing John, her parents were hoping for another boy to carry on the family line, and so they didn't choose a name for a week after her birth until they settled on Diana Frances after her mother and Lady Diana Spencer, a great-aunt who was also a prospective Princess of Wales as a potential bride for Frederick, Prince of Wales. Diana was also nicknamed Dooch within the family because of her Duchess-like attitude in childhood. On August 30th, 1961, Diana was baptized at St. Mary Magdalene Church, Sandringham. Despite her birth as the 3rd child and 4th born of the family, her parents still wanted a male to be their heir, and this really put a strain on their marriage, especially after Lady Althorp was sent to Harley Street clinics in London to determine the cause of her inability to produce a male heir. Her younger brother Charles would later describe this sole event as humiliating and a dreadful time for his parents. It was in fact probable that this was the root cause of their divorce.
Paul Workman now on the world's most famous couple, heading for the world's most famous divorce.
Diana was 7 years old when her parents divorced, and her mother went on to marry Peter Shand Kidd in 1969. Diana still lived with her mother in London immediately after her parents' separation in 1967. But after going on holiday to her father's home during the Christmas holiday that same year, her father, Lord Althorp, refused to let his daughter return to London. Shortly after, he won custody of Diana with the support of his former mother-in-law, Lady Fermoy. In 1976, Diana's father married Rain, Countess of Dartmouth. Their step-family relationship wasn't typical. Diana didn't get along with her stepmother and often called her a bully, even pushing her downstairs once. She described her childhood as very unhappy and unstable. After her father inherited the Earl Spencer title in 1975, she became Lady Diana. The family moved from Park House to Althorp, their estate in Northamptonshire. For schooling, Diana was initially homeschooled by her governess, Gertrude Allen. Later, she attended Sillifurled Private School in King, beginning her formal education there. This upbringing shaped Diana's early years, marked by family tensions and transitions. Her strained relationship with her stepmother and the move to Althorp were significant events that influenced her upbringing and perspective on life. When she was 9, she moved to Riddlesworth Hall School, an all-girls boarding school near Thetford. Later on, in 1973, she joined her sisters at Westheath Girls' School in Sevenoaks, Kent. But her academics largely suffered because of her bad performance in school, which some say is probably a result of her strained childhood and her parents' divorce and remarriage, which she largely witnessed. She even failed her O-levels twice. In spite of this, Diana stood out in terms of community service, and this outstanding spirit was recognized with an award from her school, Westheath. What she lacked in academics, she made up for in community engagement. She left Westheath when she was 16, and up until that point, her brother Charles says she was a very shy young lady. She also had great skills, including her excellent musical ability as a skilled pianist.
It's a well-known story told in an unexpected way, set to music on a Broadway stage.
I choose a fresh new start.
Diana the musical is framed around the Princess of Wales' relationship with Prince Charles.
She was an excellent swimmer and diver, and she also studied ballet and tap dance. It was only academics that was not her forte. Between 1979 and 1981, Diana lived at Coleherne Court in Chelsea, London. In 1978, she started a mini-career in line with her passion for children, working as a nanny for Philippa and Jeremy Whittaker in Hampshire. She attended a finishing school in Rougemont, Switzerland for one term, but left after Easter 1978. Back in London, she shared her mother's flat with two friends from school. In London, Diana took an advanced cooking course and worked various low-paying jobs. She was a dance instructor for youth until a skiing accident caused her to miss 3 months of work. Then, she worked as a playgroup preschool assistant, did cleaning for her sister Sarah, and acted as a hostess at parties. She also babysat for the Robertsons, an American family in London, and worked as a nursery teacher's assistant at the Young England School in Pimlico. In July 1979, her mother bought her a flat at Coleherne Court as an 18th birthday present. She lived there with 3 flatmates until February 25, 1981. It's amazing how she got involved with Prince Charles after such an eventful life. Royal marriage, sons' births, and lingering controversies. Diana and Prince Charles met in 1977 in unusual circumstances.
The love story between Prince Charles and Lady Diana is particularly steeped in royal history, around which many rumors have surfaced up to this day.
As Charles was dating her sister Sarah, none of them could have imagined their future together. Charles thought she was jolly, and after his relationship with Sarah ended in 1978, they stayed friends. Diana attended Charles's 30th birthday party in Buckingham Palace in November 1978, and in January 1979, she met Charles again at a weekend shooting party at Sandringham as a guest of Queen Elizabeth II. Later in the summer of 1980, Diana and Prince Charles met again at a house party hosted by her friend Philip de Pass in New Grove. After observing her shy nature and wise way of speaking, Charles considered her a potential girlfriend, despite their 13-year age gap. While sitting on a bale of hay at a post-polo barbecue, Diana sympathized with Charles over the loss of his great-uncle, Lord Mountbatten. Her comforting words struck a nerve, and he decided to pursue a relationship with her.
It's always easy to be smart in hindsight, but when you look at this couple's soap opera of body language throughout their marriage and before their marriage.
Did her words make him fall in love? Don't miss the next scene where things get even more interesting. After this, Prince was keen to spend more time with Diana, and he invited her to Balmoral to join him and a group of friends there for a summer holiday. This delighted Diana in no small measure, as she was beginning to adore Charles. After meeting about 13 times, Prince Charles proposed to Diana. He was said to be largely influenced by his father, Prince Philip, who TD'd him in a memo to stop playing the field and get married. His father had said, "You either marry this girl or let her go." Being confused as ever, he took this to mean that his father wanted her to marry Diana, and he proposed to her on February 3, 1981, after a few months of dating at Windsor Castle. Diana was so surprised that she first thought it a joke, but it was real. Prince Charles was damn serious. The formal engagement press call was on February 24, 1981, when after Beijing asked by reporters if they are in love, Diana had replied with certainty while Charles had said, "Whatever in love means." In March 1981, Charles flew to Australia and New Zealand for 5 weeks, leaving his newly betrothed behind. She's spotted crying at Heathrow Airport upon his departure, not because she is sad, but because before he left, he had taken a phone call with Camilla Parker Bowles, his ex. Notwithstanding all these, they got married on July 39, 1981 at St. Paul's Cathedral, with 2,650 guests, and a television audience of around 750 million people watching. Charles was wary of going through with the marriage, but he didn't want to let the royal family down. It would look as though Prince Charles was more eager to find a qualified bride than to actually find a love match. Although he was struck by some of her qualities, it wasn't necessarily love, considering that he was still very much in sync with his ex-girlfriend Camilla, a major problem that would later cause much problems in the marriage. Some believe that Prince Charles married Diana because he needed someone who would fit into the royals' family requirement of a prince, and also to produce his own heirs to the royal throne. Princess Diana's problems began right on her wedding day, because the royal family is a subject of intense media attention. It comes with the status, and anyone who is getting into the royal family must be ready to face the odds. Media attention had always been on Prince Charles ever since he started dating. Every of his love interests have been a subject of scrutiny by the press on whether or not they were fit for the royal throne. Diana was not an exception. When on their wedding day, she broke tradition by omitting the word obey from her vows, and it generated a lot of attention and criticism from the media all at once, launching her first hand into one of the many trials of the royal family. After the couple's fairy tale wedding, Diana felt overwhelmed by her royal duties and the intense media coverage of nearly every aspect of her life. The many duties and the lack of affection from the prince meant that they spent little time together, and the princess was not having it easy. Due to this, in January 1982, 12 weeks into her pregnancy with William, Diana deliberately threw herself down the stairs at the Sandringham House royal residence in Norfolk because she had eating disorder, bulimia, and was feeling so despondent and inadequate in her marriage to Charles. But the baby was unharmed. There was a ray of hope after the birth of their first son, William, on June 21, 1982, at St. Mary's Hospital in London, and Prince Charles, having attended the broth, described the experience as astonishing. The birth of their first son deepened the relationship between Diana and the prince a little. Diana experienced postpartum depression after her pregnancy with William and found the intense media attention surrounding her pregnancy difficult to bear. In 1983, when William was just 9 months old, Diana couldn't bear to leave him behind for a 6-week tour of Australia and New Zealand. She broke royal tradition by taking him along, sparking a mixed reaction from the press, from harsh criticism to applause from parts of the public. Then, on September 15, 1984, Princess Diana gave birth to Prince Harry, with Charles by her side. Interestingly, 6 weeks before Harry's birth, Charles had thought Diana was expecting a girl. When Harry, a boy, arrived instead, Diana kept it a surprise from Charles, perhaps enjoying the closeness it brought them. But Charles's disappointment over Harry's gender and his hair color strained their marriage further. Diana felt resentful, beginning a journey of secrecy and revenge. This bitterness lingered, and years later Prince William began leaking royal secrets, drawing widespread media attention. It begs the question, why did Charles break the royal rule of secrecy, and why did both sons turn away from their father? Stay tuned, the most exciting part is just around the corner. Prince William's unveiled King Charles's secrets. In the recent royal biography Endgame, written by the royal analyst Omid Scobie, secrets and explosive claims revealed in the book about King Charles, marriage to Diana, and even under his rule were attributed to have been leaked by Prince William's. Interestingly, some claim that it is due to his overambition to become king one day that he broke the sacred code of the royal family, keeping the mouth sealed and keeping secrets. The secrets released by him corroborated the many suspicions of there being a foul play surrounding the death of Princess Diana, while also adding fresh perspectives to the long-forgotten life of Princess Diana. The news was that he leaked private information about both Harry, his brother, and King Charles. Princess Diana's death had been subject to one conspiracy theory or the other, and the most apparent one was that the driver was intoxicated. But more than this, the princess's suspicion of the royal family always plotting against her during her lifetime did not help matters. During her frustrating times with the prince, she believed at some point that Charles wanted her out of the way in order to marry his true love, Camilla. So, many implied that her death might not be a natural accident after all. One major open secret of Prince Charles was his affair with Camilla Parker Bowlers, both before and after the marriage with Princess Diana. On finding out, Camilla was a bone in Camilla's throat, coupled with the loneliness, extreme media attention, and the mental health issues that Diana faced after the marriage. On the Monday before her wedding, she had discovered a beautiful bracelet her future husband intended to give to Camilla. Diana considered calling off the wedding after discovering the bracelet, which confirmed her worst suspicions about Charles's relationship with Camilla. But after lunch with her older sisters, she was persuaded otherwise, telling her that it was too late to chicken out. Tremendously unhappy in their marriage by 1986, both Charles and Diana had extramarital affairs. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Charles maintained constant communication with Camilla, who was also unhappily married to a promiscuous husband. Their affair reignited despite her troubled marriage, a fact Prince Charles admitted to his biographer Jonathan Dimbleby in 1994.
She was the villain. She was the third person in the marriage.
The villain Prince Harry is referring to is Camilla, King Charles's wife and now Queen Consort.
Meanwhile, rumors swirled that Diana had an affair with Army Captain James Hewitt, possibly in response to her own marital unhappiness. Between 1987 and 1992, their troubled marriage garnered intense media scrutiny. Diana's absence from Charles's family summer trip in 1987 sparked headlines about a royal rift. Public appearances often revealed their distant and unhappy demeanor, further fueling speculation about their relationship. The media closely followed their every move, analyzing their interactions and adding to the public's fascination with their marital struggles. In 1988, Georgina Howell reported that Diana was adored by everyone in the world, except her husband. The following year, in 1989, Princess Diana confronted Camilla Parker about her affairs with Prince Charles, which Camilla did not deny. This confrontation highlighted the strained dynamics within their marriage. Moving forward to May 1992, the publication of Diana, Her True Story, caused an international scandal. Biographer Andrew Morton detailed Prince Charles's mistreatment of Diana, including her struggles with self-harm, bulimia, and suicidal thoughts. Later that year, in November 1992, the Prince and Princess of Wales embarked on a disastrous official trip to South Korea. Their visible misery during the trip earned them the nickname the Glums in the media, signaling an apparent end to any semblance of cordiality between them. This turbulent period further intensified the media attention and speculation surrounding their troubled marriage. Separation, divorce, and Princess Diana's tragic death. All hell was let loose when the Prime Minister John Major announced in the House of Commons that Prince Charles and Princess Diana were amicably separating with no plans to divorce, and the decision on December 9, 1992. They both agreed to continue to participate fully in the upbringing of their children, he reads from a statement prepared by Buckingham Palace. In 1994, June 29th, Prince Charles attended an ill-advised tell-all interview, which made Princess Diana and the royal family furious. Consequent to this, Princess Diana also sat down for the panorama interview with Martin Bashir.
Did your relationship with James Hewitt go beyond a close friendship?
Yes, it did. Yes.
Were you unfaithful?
Yes, I adored him. Yes, I was in love with him.
Where she spoke of her deep sadness in the marriage, and how it had always been the three of them in the marriage, firing shots at Prince Charles and Camilla. In 1995, during the subsistence of the separation, Diana entered into a relationship with Hasnat Khan, a British Pakistani. The relationship was kept secret, but became public on November 3, 1996, after it was reported in the media. Diana tried to deflect and say they were not dating, which annoyed Hasnat, but they got past it, with Diana even visiting Hasnat's family. However, their indecision and lack of agreement on marriage led to their breakup in 1997. During this relationship, the marriage between Charles and Diana and its many controversies were laid to rest when Queen Elizabeth II wrote to Diana, requesting an early divorce for the country's sake. On June 15, 1996, the divorce between the Prince and Princess of Wales was granted. On August 28, 1996, the decree absolute arrived, and the couple was no longer married. That day, while getting ready for an engagement at the English National Ballet, Princess Diana's brother-in-law, Sir Robert Fellows, reportedly wished her good luck, stating that the divorce was an end to a wonderful story, to which she replied that it was the beginning of a new chapter. Diana received a significant financial settlement, but was stripped of her royal status. After the divorce, the cold relationship between the couple thawed, and Prince Charles even dropped by for Diana's 35th birthday. Whatever the Wales's post-divorce relationship could have been was shattered on August 31st, 1997, when Princess Diana was killed in a Paris car crash. Surprisingly, it was Prince Charles and Diana's sisters who rushed to bring her home, and she was given a royal funeral. At her funeral, Prince Charles angered royal watchers by wearing a navy suit instead of mourning black. The children were left motherless and had to grieve their mother in front of the world. Prince Philip urged them to take part in their mother's funeral procession and guided them through it all. Both Prince William and Prince Harry later turned against their father in solidarity with their deceased mother. Although there is no love lost between the siblings, especially after Harry's marriage to Meghan and his disrespect to the royal family, they had one thing in common.
On September 7, 1997, William and Harry, then ages 15 and 12, followed a route that began at Kensington Palace to Westminster Abbey.
They probably resented King Charles for the life led with their mother. Despite Princess Diana's tumultuous life, she left a legacy behind. She stood up for herself when she took a big step forward and got treatment for her bulimia, which had tormented her for many years. She also calmly confronted Camilla about her relationship with her husband, as it then. She was also able to attend to her own interest, despite her royal and marital troubles, as she embraced her role as the people's princess. She spent time reconnecting with people, listening to their stories, and helping her connect more with the world around her.
That 3 children claim to have received messages from what some Catholic theologians believe was the Virgin Mary.
The extraterrestrials give to the children a telepathic message saying you are not alone on this planet. We are here. We have been here some thousands of years ago. We observe you. Please prepare mankind that we will return again.
For centuries, the secrets of Fatima have left millions around the globe in shock and fear. Due to past occurrences, we've come to know that the weight of these prophecies cannot be understated. With the first 2 secrets seemingly fulfilled, an unprecedented number of global events and coincidences now suggest the imminent fulfillment of the 3rd prophecy.
The 3rd secret of Fatima talks about this vision of a man in white who is walking about a city, and then he arrives at a cross, and then at this cross, he is shot with bullets and dies there.
What exactly does the 3rd secret of Fatima entail, and what implications does it have for the Church and the world at large? Join us as we look into the mysteries of Lady Fatima and explore why many believe the 3rd prophecy is about to unfold this year: the apparition of the Virgin Mary in Fatima, Portugal. One of those prophecies that have been prominent over the years, most especially amongst the Catholics, is that of Lady Fatima in Portugal. According to Lucia Santos, while giving her narrative to the Church at a tender age, she affirmed that the Virgin Mary had appeared to her and her other cousins, Francisco and Jacinta Marto, on the 13th of May, 1917. In her narration, she said that Mary had told them about 3 different events that were bound to alter the course of history on Earth. Surprised? Well, don't be, for this wasn't the first. In the course of history, the Virgin Mary has appeared to various people from different times and works of life. One of the earliest of the Virgin Mary's apparitions is that of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Mary appeared to an indigenous Mexican peasant by the name of Juan Diego in the year 1531. From Diego's account, she spoke to him in his native Nahuatl language, asking that they build a church in her honor, and they did this. Thanks to the conviction of Bishop Juan de Zumarraga, the church was later built on the hill of Tepeyac, where Mary had appeared.
I saw a most beautiful lady. A lady? What lady? I don't know. Suddenly she was there, and then suddenly she disappeared.
There is also the apparition of Our Lady of Lourdes in 1858 in Lourdes, France. This time she had appeared to Bernadette Suberus, a 14-year-old girl, requesting penance and prayer for the conversion of sinners. At the end of the day, this resulted in the purification of the site, making it a place for healing and pilgrimage. It isn't only there, but also the lady's appearance to the children at Medjugorje, Bosnia, and Herzegovina. These were all a few documented times that the Holy Mary, the one chosen by God, made herself seen by people on earth. Looking into the nature of all the people that were graced with Mary's presence, they all shared something in common. They were all pure of heart. This doesn't come as a surprise, for the Bible said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." It's true that the Virgin Mary doesn't pose as a God figure, but her holiness is like no other one can find on earth. Hence, it is godly. That said, everyone who happened to see her came an inch close to seeing the holiness that heaven entailed. Regardless of how fascinating such an encounter must be, we aren't here to talk about Mary, but about her apparition to Lucia Santos and the other two children at Fatima, Portugal. You can say the lady's apparition at Fatima stood out the most because of the prophecies. In all her past apparitions, Mary had made a habit of making requests, seeking penance, and demanding subjugation to God. However, never had she given a glimpse or narrated what was to happen in the future. So yes, this was the first, and this was special. And who better to entrust with these prophecies than children, who possess the purest of hearts? The oldest of the trio that had seen Mary at Fatima was Lucia, as she was popularly called when she was little. Young Lucia was the youngest of a family of 9. Her parents, Antonio dos Santos and Maria Rosa Ferreira, who got married on the 19th of November 1890, were what you'd call middle-class peasants in the society. They weren't really rich, but they had a lot of land in Portugal. This included places like Ortiga, Valinhos, Montelo, and Fatima, to mention a few. Regardless of their vast number of lands, Antonio and Rosa had decided to stay in Aljustrel, Fatima, where they gave birth to Lucia. At the time of Lucia's birth, there was a law that forced parents to pay a fine if they failed to baptize their child on the 8th day after birth. And somehow, Antonia and his wife decided to move up the timeline, registering her birthday as the 22nd of March 1907 instead of the 28th of March. Not like that stopped the radiance of Mary shining up on Lucia. In Lucia's account of her parents, she affirmed that her dad was not just up and doing trying to fend for the family. He was also quite generous and very sociable at that. Not to mention, he was the one who brought up the entire family in the ways of the Catholic faith. Antonio just didn't seem to fancy the local parish priest, so he'd rather attend Mass in a neighboring town. On the other hand, Lucia's mother was well-learned, but she had somehow left out instilling literacy in the children. Most of the time, Maria would take part in catechism, offering lessons to both her children and her neighbors. This was how Lucia was able to pick a thing or two along the way growing up. If we have to talk about the attributes that Lucia had, you can say she was just like any random girl growing up. She wasn't the fairest in the land, nor was she the most famous. The only things that set her apart from her peers were her black eyes and her long, thick hair. What's more, she also had a knack for telling good stories and singing melodious songs that made other children gather. It wasn't until later years that we learned that she was a poet. This conclusion was reached on seeing a poem she had written about Jacinta in her memoirs. You can say that Lucia's faith became apparent when she turned 6. At that age, she had already opted to take her first communion, ignoring the fact that she was only allowed to do so at the age of 10. As a matter of fact, she was turned down by the parish priest, but it was not until Father Cruz's intervention. After talking to Lucia, the Jesuit missionary believed that she was more than ready to partake of the communion, and so he convinced the priest. She had her first confession at the same age, and then right after, she prayed before the altar of the Lady of the Rosary.
We honor the Blessed Virgin Mary under the title Our Lady of the Rosary.
Then, something unheard of seemed to have happened. According to the young lady, she saw the statue smile at her. She was enveloped with joy as she gave the account, but very few seemed to believe the words of a little girl. In all, her father was the one who believed Lucia's vision the most. After the incident at the altar, that became her cue to ward off everything that was worldly. As a daughter of a peasant, she, alongside her family and friends, would simply take care of the sheep in the village. This continued till May 1917, when Lucia and her cousins were out in the fields of Cova da Iria. On that day, not just the lives of the children but those of the people of Aljustral, Fatima took a new turn for good. So what exactly happened, and how did that come to affect the faith of all Catholics and Christians alike? You are about to be amazed by these religious mysteries. The secrets of Lady Fatima. You know how children are generally known to possess a wild imagination? That's what the many both at Fatima and the rest of Portugal must have thought when they heard of Lucia and her cousins Francisco and Jacinta's encounter at the field of Cova da Iria. Apparently, between the months of May and October 1917, a lady veiled in extreme luminous brilliance was visiting the children while they tended to the sheep.
Just before the first apparition of Our Lady in May 1917, the little shepherds were minding their sheep on a little hillock where this basilica is today. They were suddenly startled by what they described as lightning on a clear day.
According to the children, they said that the woman would always appear on the 13th day of each month, precisely at noon, and this continued for 6 months. The only time when they weren't fortunate to see the woman in bright white was in August. At the time, they were held back by the local administrator being locked up in jail. For all the times that the lady visited the children, they said that she'd ask for penance and sacrifices for the sinners' souls. Furthermore, the very same lady emphasized the need for the children to say the rosary every day as a means to usher in peace in the world. Eventually, with the whole event becoming a habit, it wasn't long before the children concluded that the lady whose brilliance enveloped the entire field was the Virgin Mary. As a matter of fact, the revelation did cause quite an uproar in the village at the time. For Lucia, she was being ridiculed by her mother, who believed that was her way of getting the most attention. What even made the event more hilarious for Maria at the time was when Lucia came reporting that Mary had ordered her to read and write as an essential means to spread the gospel. Little did she know that her daughter's path was already being carved out. Instead, all through the time the Virgin Mary visited, it was just her father who encouraged Lucia and believed all she had to say. While all of these went on in the little town of Fatima, the day of apparition that stood out the most was the 13th of July, 1917. During this visitation, Mary told them about 3 unsettling events that would shake the core of the world. In her words, chaos, anarchy, and global disorientation will rule the day and night, and it might be too late for the world. The Virgin Mary's narration of these events later became known as the 3 Secrets of Fatima by the Church. Why? Because Mary had only disclosed these secrets to the children. For revelations deemed as secrets, Lucia Santos kept it to herself all through her teenagehood. No doubt she did mention the event of Mary's apparition to people, but she wasn't ready to reveal all that Mary had said. For some reason, she affirmed that it was Mary's will, and she was willing to leave it that way. Having lived through a blessed life like none other, Lucia eventually decided to move to Porto in 1921. It was here that she enrolled in the school of the Sisters of St. Dorothy, the very first step that took her to become a saint in the church. Later on, she entered as a postulant in the same convent in Pontevedra, Spain. In 1941, right about the time Lucia Santos was 34 years old, she was already a nun based at the Carmelite convent in Colombia, Portugal. This was when the details of the apparition of the Lady of Fatima started to become clearer. Apparently, in the same year, the Bishop of Leiria, José Alves Correa da Silva, had requested that she give an account of her secrets from Mary as a means to help with the publication of a book on Jacinta. And somehow, she was more than willing to accept. Somehow, it seemed like the time was finally right for the world to know. However, we wouldn't say the same for the 3rd secret. While she documented 2 secrets, she decided to leave out the 3rd for the latter years when the world would be ready.
See how horrible it is. And the second was that there would be an end to the war. This is World War I.
The 1st secret was more like a vision of the state of hell. In this vision, the children saw a vast sea of fire filled with demons and the souls of the damned. For the souls, they appeared transparent, more like burning embers. Spending their time in the sea of fire, the souls appeared to be suffering greatly, like no such suffering they had ever imagined. And on the sides, the horrendous demons would snare, tormenting the souls. According to Lucia, the Virgin Mary showed them this terrifying scene as a means to tell that hell existed, emphasizing the need to always pray for the conversion of sinners so they don't end up in such a state. As such, Mary urged the children to always devote their life to her Immaculate Heart as a means to save the souls that were damned. In other words, think of the first secret as Mary's call to repentance, reminding us that sins do have consequences. Now let's take a minute to pause and think about the authenticity of Lucia's narration. Let's just assume that as a child, she had a wild imagination. If that was the case, she had 24 years to get her head straight. So she should have been able to tell if what she had seen was real or not, don't you think? However, that was not the case. Lucia had grown, and the apparition of Lady Fatima in her youth only became clearer than ever. For one, she was more convinced that she wasn't just chosen to perform God's work, but she was convinced that God had plans for her. That's how she came to build her faith in the Lord through the Virgin Mary. Aside from the first secret, there's also the second that needed to be accounted for. In this revelation, the Virgin Mary warned of a second, more devastating war if people did not cease offending God. Not only that, she also emphasized the urgency for Russia to heed her requests pertaining to the consecration of the land to her Immaculate Heart and the practice of the first Saturday's devotion. As a warning to the world, she said if Russia failed to do all that was requested, they would likely spread their faults and errors around the world, leading to wars and persecution of the Church. Upon careful consideration, it was later learned that the second prophecy of Mary was pointing towards World War II. This conclusion came up because the prediction was right before the end of World War I. If we are being honest, if there was one thing many didn't see coming, it was definitely World War II. For a war as profound as to ravage the entire world, it sure led to the decimation of many countries, with top leading countries not being an exception. As for the lady's warning about Russia, it was a warning about the rise of communism, one that was bound to lead to persecution and suffering. If you consider this warning, it somehow aligns with the rise of the Soviet Union and the spread of communism that followed. It is believed that it took the intervention of Pope Pius XV and Pope John Paul II to end communism. Apparently, Pope Pius had partially consecrated Russia in 1942, while Pope John Paul consecrated the land wholly in 1981 and 1984 to dissolve the Union and end the Cold War. Now, these were for the two secrets. However, what about the third secret of Lady Fatima? Sit tight. We finally got to the part that you were waiting for. The third secret of Lady Fatima that shook the world. After 2 years had passed when the two secrets of Fatima were now known by the Church and the world, Bishop da Silva requested for the third secret. This posed a problem at the time because she didn't seem to have gotten the authorization she needed from God. It was clear that the Church wanted full closure, but Lucia Santos seemed to believe that the time wasn't right yet, and so she was conflicted within herself. If we are one to say, it was more like a mind battle between her beliefs and the superiority of her superiors, and she had to make a decision real quickly. Normally, the Church wouldn't have put Lucia in that state of pressure, but one thing that frightened them was that her time on earth was coming to an end. In October 1943, she became sick with influenza and pleurisy, the very same illness that took the lives of her cousins. When it comes to the way the trio died, no one knows if they were all fated to go out by the same illness by God, or if it was just a coincidence. The only thing we know is that the influenza pandemic was ravaging the land at the time. Francisco, who had a deep prayer life, was the very first to go out. He died at the age of 10 on April 4th, 1919. However, before he died, he remained devoted all through his days, praying to God for the salvation of souls. Jacinta, who was the youngest of them all, was more like the most spiritually mature. She believed that her suffering was for the conversion of sinners, just like the Virgin Mary had ordered them. As a matter of fact, her own illness was the most enduring and the most painful. To even tell you how much she suffered, she had to be transferred to several hospitals around the country. However, Jacinta already knew her fate was sealed as she bore her suffering with faith. On February 20th, 1920, she died in Lisbon with a sense of accomplishment, believing to have fulfilled one of the core wishes of the lady. These happened years ago, and somehow, fate had caught up with Lucia. Learning of her fate, she wrote down the secret, sealing it in an envelope and ordering the church not to open it till 1960, and they agreed. It was in the year 2000 that Pope John Paul II released the secret to the public. And it says, "After the two parts which I have already explained, at the left of Our Lady and a little above, we saw an angel with a flaming sword in his left hand. Flashing, it gave out flames that looked as though they would set the world on fire. But they died out in contact with the splendor that Our Lady radiated towards him from her right hand. Pointing to the earth with his right hand, the angel cried out in a loud voice, 'Penance, penance, penance!' And we saw in an immense light that is God, something similar to how people appear in a mirror when they pass in front of it. A bishop dressed in white. We had the impression that it was the Holy Father. Other bishops, priests, men and women religious going up a steep mountain, at the top of which there was a big cross of rough-hewn trunks, as of a cork tree with the bark. Before reaching there, the Holy Father passed through a big city half in ruins and half trembling with halting step. Afflicted with pain and sorrow, he prayed for the souls of the corpses he met on his way. Having reached the top of the mountain, on his knees at the foot of the big cross, he was killed by a group of soldiers who fired bullets and arrows at him. And in the same way there died one after another the other bishops, priests, men and women religious, and various lay people of different ranks and positions. Beneath the two arms of the cross, there were two angels each, with a crystal aspersorium in his hand, in which they gathered up the blood of the martyrs, and with it sprinkled the souls that were making their way to God. Just like several other prophecies relating to the church, the third prophecy points towards the infiltration of the church by the evil ones. What's more, it talks about the tribulations and trials that Christians and the Catholic Church would face in the years to come. And it doesn't just apply to the followers of Christ. The church leaders will also face several trials like that they've never seen before. At the end of the day, Lady Fatima's message was well received by the people. However, Antonio Sochi and several Portuguese religious leaders were skeptical about the content of what the Pope had read.
But there is one person who has been mostly missing from his side in public, former First Lady Melania Trump. Our Randy Kay looks at where the former First Lady has been since she left the White House.
Michelle Obama gives a speech, and everyone loves it. It's fantastic. They think she's absolutely great. My wife, Melania, gives the exact same speech.
Donald Trump's influence stems not just from his wealth or political power, but also from his unwavering faith. During his presidential campaign, his iconic slogan, "Make America Great Again," resonated with many. One of the most surprising moments was when he openly declared his belief in Jesus Christ and the importance of faith for the nation. Melania Trump has been a constant support on his journey, supporting him during his victorious first term, and now standing by him once again as he runs for the White House in 2024. While Melania is known for her privacy, she has recently made a bold move in exposing a shocking truth emphasizing her faith in God. What shocking revelation has she made that has stunned the world? And how does it relate to the end times? Let's find out. Donald Trump's Christian faith has been evident throughout his public life. He has never shied away from expressing his belief in God, consistently mentioning him in his speeches and demonstrating respect for him. Trump has often emphasized the presence of God and acknowledged his reliance on him, finding spiritual strength in his faith. What sets Trump apart is his willingness to openly declare and defend his faith, a rarity among politicians.
Somebody said to me the other day, "You're the most famous person in the world by far." I said, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." They said, "Yes, you are." I said, "No." They said, "Who's more famous?" I said, "Jesus Christ."
His actions and words reflect a genuine devotion to his religious beliefs. Trump has expressed his complete reliance on Jesus and highlighted the significance of the Christian religion, once stating that Jesus Christ forever changed the world. Trump even humbly said, "The U.S. needs a savior, and it's not me." Melania Trump, Trump's wife, has also demonstrated her faith in God on multiple occasions. While she is generally private about her personal life, her faith is an exception. Melania has publicly expressed her belief in God and even led in prayers during a national prayer service in 2017. This act highlighted the importance of prayer in her life and showcased her commitment to her faith. Melania has been seen attending religious services with her family, including Christmas Mass, further demonstrating her dedication to her Christian beliefs. For Melania, her faith has been a source of strength and guidance. She recognizes the role of faith in her decision-making process and relies on it for wisdom and discernment. Recently, Melania has made some revelations that have sent shockwaves through religious and political communities. But before we dive into the revelations she made and their implications for believers, let's explore some very important context. The Trump couple has been the subject of considerable criticism regarding their professed faith. Many individuals argue that their declarations about God and the campaigns they orchestrate to appeal to Christians are nothing more than calculated attempts to garner support. Consequently, every action and statement made by the Trump family is subjected to intense scrutiny and relentless judgment. A particular incident that ignited endless debates revolved around former First Lady Melania Trump's recitation of the Lord's Prayer at a rally in support of her husband, former President Donald Trump. Some viewed it as a genuine expression of faith, while others perceived it as a crafty maneuver. The American Family Association, AFA, chimed in, with AFA President Tim Wildman asserting that Melania Trump delivered a momentous reading. He contended that acknowledging God in public life is a deeply ingrained tradition in the United States, tracing back to its very foundation. Wildman even invoked President George Washington, who insisted that failure to acknowledge God, religion, and morality disqualified one from being considered a patriot. The authenticity of Melania's prayer became a topic of impassioned discussion. While some accused her of pandering to Christians, others staunchly maintained that it was a genuine manifestation of her faith. Tim Wildman expressed his admiration for the First Family's acknowledgement of God and the Bible, emphasizing the refreshing nature of such openness. However, there were those who found the prayer disingenuous, almost resembling a theatrical performance designed to manipulate the audience. The room erupted in cheers after the prayer, evoking discomfort in some, as it felt more like a pep squad cheer than a solemn invocation. Controversy seems to come after Melania Trump whenever she expresses her faith. For instance, she met with Pope Francis at the Vatican in 2017, where she extended a rosary for his blessing. The Pope placed his hand over hers and made the sign of the cross, a gesture considered a profound honor in Christian circles. Subsequently, Melania took to social media, deeming the meeting an honor and expressing her profound humility. Similarly, at her 2005 wedding in an Episcopal church, Melania eschewed a bouquet in favor of carrying a rosary, symbolizing the deep personal significance of her faith. Despite the criticism Melania endures, both she and her husband consistently issue public statements defending their faith and exhorting others to believe in God and to pray. However, regardless of the sincerity with which Melania articulates her convictions, the majority of responses she receives are rife with censure, accusing her of possessing a spurious faith. Nevertheless, the Trump family persists in expressing their perspectives on faith. They steadfastly believe in God and earnestly endeavor to align their actions with what they perceive as God's guidance. Melania recognizes that she cannot coerce anyone into supporting or trusting her. Instead, she places her trust in God and adheres to what she believes is right. Being thrust into the public eye invariably renders individuals vulnerable to criticism. Melania comprehends this reality and accepts that she will be subjected to scrutiny. The purpose behind the Trump family's prayer was to safeguard churches from undue government influence and to ensure that individuals are not coerced into subscribing to a specific religious doctrine contrary to their deeply held beliefs. Like any Christians embarking on a journey to propagate the Word of God, the Trump family confronts numerous obstacles and trials. They endure withering glances and acrimonious remarks from those around them, yet they persevere, fortified by their unwavering faith and the knowledge that God accompanies them on their arduous path. Moreover, ordinary believers harbor the hope that more government officials will exhibit candor in sharing their faith, irrespective of their religious affiliation. The prayer delivered by the Trump family was deemed a beautiful expression of devotion, and it is incumbent upon individuals in positions of power to openly profess their beliefs and values. Let's look at practical events where Melania proved her faith.
Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses.
How did Melania Trump seize a moment from an awful protest to pray for the nation? During her time in the White House, former First Lady Melania Trump expressed her reliance on prayer and her desire for healing in the United States. Melania admitted, "As your First Lady, it has been inspiring to witness firsthand what the people of our great nation will do for one another, especially when we are at our most vulnerable." She urged fellow citizens to take a step back, consider different perspectives, and refrain from violence. Melania emphasized the importance of not making assumptions based on skin color or using political differences as a basis for aggression. She highlighted the strength and character of our country, which have been evident in communities affected by natural disasters and the ongoing pandemic. In her call for healing, Melania appealed for grace, understanding, and peace. She prayed silently for blessings upon the nation and its people. It is worth noting that Melania often sought solace in prayer, both for her family and for America. Despite facing criticism, she turned to God and found peace. While she did not explicitly state it, her actions indirectly encouraged Christians to lean on prayer during difficult and exhausting times, reminding us that there is always someone ready to listen to our every word: God. The Bible provides valuable guidance on how to handle hate and criticism, offering wisdom and insights that can help us navigate these challenging situations. One of the key teachings is found in Matthew 5:44, where Jesus instructs his followers to love their enemies and pray for those who persecute them. This radical concept of responding to hate with love is a powerful reminder of the transformative power of forgiveness and compassion. Proverbs 15:1 advises us that a gentle answer turns away wrath, while a harsh word stirs up anger. This verse teaches us the importance of responding to criticism with humility and grace, rather than reacting with defensiveness or aggression. It encourages us to choose our words carefully and respond with kindness, even when faced with hostility. Another biblical principle to consider is found in Romans 12:17-21, which encourages believers not to seek revenge, but to overcome evil with good. This passage reminds us that responding to hate with hate only perpetuates a cycle of negativity. Instead, we are called to respond to criticism and animosity with acts of kindness, seeking to break the cycle and promote reconciliation. Furthermore, the Bible reminds us of the power of prayer in dealing with hate and criticism. Psalm 109:4 urges us to respond to hate with prayer, saying, "But I am a man of prayer. They repay me evil for good and hatred for my friendship." Turning to God in prayer allows us to find solace, seek guidance, and ask for strength to handle difficult situations with wisdom and grace. Difficult situations are great tests to show faith, and the same applies to Melania. Sometimes faith is proven in our support for godly endeavors, even in the face of adversity, controversy, and ridicule. How has Melania's support for Trump further emphasized her faith, and what could be learnt from that? Throughout the first election campaign and subsequent years, Melania Trump made infrequent public appearances, but when she did, she consistently showed public support for her husband. In one notable speech, she expressed her confidence in Donald Trump's ability to fight for the American people, stating, "If you want someone to fight for you and your country, I can assure you he's the guy. He will never, ever give up." And most importantly, he will never ever let you down. Melania emphasized that his success represents inclusivity rather than division, as he intends to represent all people, including Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hispanics, African Americans, Asians, the poor, and the middle class. She highlighted Donald's track record of successfully working with individuals of diverse faiths and backgrounds. While Melania Trump did not appear at campaign events after her husband officially announced his re-election bid, she expressed her unwavering support for his third attempt at the White House. Speaking to the media, she stated, "He has my full support, and we are eager to restore hope for the future and lead America with love and strength." As former President Donald Trump announced his re-election campaign, Melania stood by his side, and although she did not attend subsequent events, she emphasized her belief in his ability to achieve greatness and prosperity once again. Melania also shared her commitment to using her platform to promote the well-being of children if her husband were to be elected to a second term. She expressed her continued focus on creating a safe and nurturing environment for children to learn, grow, and thrive. Additionally, she expressed her willingness to address any additional issues that may arise, stating, "If further challenges emerge, I will take the time to study and understand their root causes." Melania outlined her plans for implementing her humanitarian projects and ensuring the integration of messages and projects of faith if she were to continue her role as First Lady. Melania Trump's dedication to promoting the well-being of others serves as an inspiring example for Christians who seek to make a positive impact on their local communities. Following her steps, believers can contribute to the well-being of their communities in various ways. Christians can emulate Melania's call for unity and inclusivity. By reaching out to people of different backgrounds, faiths, and socioeconomic statuses, they can foster a sense of togetherness and promote understanding and acceptance. Building relationships based on love and respect allows Christians to bridge divides and create a supportive environment for all. Melania's emphasis on compassion and service can guide Christians in their efforts to meet the needs of their communities. Engaging in acts of kindness, volunteering at local charities, or organizing initiatives to support the vulnerable are practical ways to demonstrate God's love and care for others. Furthermore, Christians can follow Melania's example of using their platforms, talents, and resources to advocate for causes that benefit their communities. Whether it's raising awareness about local issues, supporting education and healthcare initiatives, or addressing social injustices, believers can make a difference by lending their voices and resources to uplift their neighbors. Why is it important to preach and share revelations in the midst of criticism? And why was her revelation? When we look at Melania's story, we come to understand the immense challenge of preaching God's word. Paul emphasizes this in his statement. How then can they call on the one they have not believed in? And how can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can they preach unless they are sent? This passage highlights the importance of proclaiming the gospel message and celebrates those who carry this message. Paul quotes the prophet Isaiah saying, "How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those who bring good news, who proclaim peace, who bring good tidings, who proclaim salvation, who say to Zion, 'Your God reigns.'" Preaching God's word requires our complete dedication: mind, body, spirit, emotions, and life. Though we are imperfect beings, our feet become beautiful through the message we carry. A significant aspect of early church preaching was the presence of threats and persecution. Peter, John, and other apostles faced persecution for their proclamation of the gospel in Acts 4 and 5. Stephen preached to a hostile audience in Acts 7 and was killed for it. Paul, Barnabas, Silas, Timothy, and others were also persecuted while establishing churches in the name of the Lord. Even today, in a culture of spiritual apathy and moral confusion, we must remain committed to preaching the gospel. While we may not face outright persecution, we are still called to serve Christ and speak on his behalf. In 1 Timothy 4:12, Paul instructs Timothy to be an example to the believers in speech, life, love, faith, and purity. This instruction holds true for us today as well. We must teach and represent the same gospel to each new generation within our congregations. By the grace of God, we help them understand and apply the power of God to their lives. We are called to show the members of our churches what it means to know Christ intimately and live in His grace and love. Despite the thousands of years that separate us from the apostles' practical examples, we are still tasked with this mission. But how do we preach the gospel message? What methods and styles are available to us at this current time? Regardless of the method, preaching cannot be done without the help and power of the Holy Spirit. We believe that relevant and challenging preaching flows from the overflow of our relationship with Christ and with one another. Our time spent with God in prayer, reading Scripture, and serving one another strengthens us and enhances our ministry. Romans 15:4 states that our teaching and preaching are meant to give endurance, encouragement, and unity to those who follow Christ. This task requires our full dedication. As the Apostle Paul said to Timothy, we are to preach the word, be prepared in season and out of season, correct, rebuke, and encourage with great patience and careful instruction. This is indeed a challenge, but may God strengthen and encourage each of us to fulfill our ministry with the grace and power of our Lord. No matter what happens, we must continue to preach the word and spend time in prayer with God. Melania's practice of prayer serves as an example for us. She often recites a prayer when appearing in public, using it as a means of communicating with God. Regular prayer is a good habit that we should maintain and turn into a regular activity. There may be times when we feel weary or uninspired in our prayer life. We might view prayer or scripture reading as a boring chore, rather than an intimate connection with the living God. However, deep down, we all desire to connect with our Creator, and He desires to connect with us. So how do we reach out to the invisible God? The answer is simple. We make it a habit. Although connecting with God is different from meeting a friend at a coffee shop, we can still establish a consistent spiritual discipline. It takes effort to find the time and energy to regularly connect with God, just as it does with any meaningful relationship. Scheduling time alone with God and being intentional about it is crucial. Think of it as scheduling an appointment with a friend. Consistency is key, but it doesn't mean falling into a monotonous routine. Don't be afraid to change your habits and explore new strategies that work best for you. And most importantly, don't give up, even if it feels challenging at first. Now, what is Melania's revelation that has encouraged Christians to put in more work in their journey? Melania Trump has expressed deep concern over the declining state of faith among Christians and the perceived erosion of America's connection with God. She believes that the nation is gradually losing its grip on its spiritual foundations, and this is evident in the diminishing importance placed on religious values and principles. Melania advocates for a revitalization of faith, encouraging individuals to embrace their beliefs, foster a stronger relationship with God, and recognize the vital role that faith plays in shaping a morally upright society. She urges Americans to reflect on their spiritual heritage and work towards restoring a profound connection with God. Melania's story reminds us that preaching the gospel is not reserved for a select few. It is the calling of every believer.
Perhaps he merely recognized an unfortunate but universal truth that history does repeat itself.
This was not the end. It was only the beginning of our fight to rescue the American dream.
The same as Donald Trump in 2016 when I predicted Donald Trump's win on my totally nonpartisan system.
Nostradamus was a highly influential prophet who predicted terrifying events such as the deaths of kings, the rise of Nazism in Germany, and the violent French Revolution. This has left many curious whether he had any prophecies about America. Surprisingly, America also has its own Nostradamus, who has predicted all the presidential elections in the United States over the past 40 years with over 95% accuracy. We're talking about Alan Lichtman.
Alan Lichtman has accurately predicted the winner of the presidential election for the past 40 years.
The Nostradamus of U.S. presidential elections. Do you want to know how accurate these two figures have been and what they predicted for Donald Trump in 2024? Join us as we explore the tales of the prophets and the fate of a king. Past predictions of Nostradamus.
Maybe what happened with Nostradamus is that maybe he had all of that knowledge figured out already. So maybe that gave him a huge flexibility to predict many of these things.
When you hear the name Nostradamus, the first thing that comes to mind is apocalyptic prophecies and doomsday predictions. But Michel de Nostradamus was just a Frenchman like us who lived between 1503 and 1506. Little is known about his family life, but historians agree he was from a noble family because he exhibited signs of someone who received a good education. He dedicated much of his life to practicing medicine and curing contagious diseases, but no confirmation that he had a medical degree. Not many people knew him until he published his book, Les Prophéties, in 1555. This collection of 942 prophetic quatrains made him very popular, especially in 6th century France. The verses cover various topics, from natural disasters and wars to political unrest and social changes. His followers claimed that he could predict historical events like the French Revolution, the rise of Napoleon, and even the 9/11 attacks. On the other hand, critics argue that he uses vague language that allows for interpretations to fit almost any event, and his focus on broad themes like war and famine makes some predictions statistically likely to occur eventually. At the end of this video, we hope you have made up your mind on which side of the story you'll fall to. But in the meantime, let us look at some of his alarming prophecies that have already come to pass. One of the first Nostradamus prophecies to come to pass was the death of King Henry II. Henry II and the prophet Nostradamus lived at the same time, and Nostradamus, who was even famous, addressed him as the most invincible Henry King of France in a letter. Unfortunately, fate wasn't kind to Henry. Despite his reputation for strength and being only 40 years old, he met a gruesome end. Henry loved physical activity like hunting and jousting, and this passion for sports ultimately led to his death. In the summer of 1559, a jousting tournament was held to celebrate a peace treaty. During a joust with a young soldier, the soldier's lance broke into pieces. Tragically, the broken pieces struck the king in the eye and skull, leading to his death. King Henry II's death in a jousting accident ignited speculation that Nostradamus predicted it.
A royal prince injured in a game, 3 around the middle, trussed up in chains.
The prophecy in question describes a young lion overcoming an older one, piercing his eyes through a golden cage, and 2 wounds leading to a cruel death. While some find this very accurate, critics point out that the prophecy mentions a field of combat and a single battle, which doesn't quite match the celebratory joust where Henry was fatally injured. Even if the details don't align perfectly, the king's death, associated with Nostradamus's words, is relevant to the prophet's words. That's not all. Some people believe that Nostradamus predicted the rise of Adolf Hitler. One quatrain from his writing mentions,
"A young child born in depths of Western Europe, his tongue seducing great troops, his reign increasing in the Eastern Kingdom."
A young child will be born of poor people in Western Europe. This child would then seduce a great troop with their words and gain fame beyond Europe. Another quatrain mentions fighting close by the Hister, which could be interpreted as a reference to Hitler or the Danube River, historically called the Hister. But the most explosive prophecy of Nostradamus to date seems to be the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. One quatrain describes scourges the like of which was never seen, occurring within 2 cities. This devastation could be seen as a possible prediction of the atomic bombs. The prophecy goes on to depict a grim scenario with famine within plague, which might be interpreted as radiation sickness and war's long-term effects, and people put out by steel, potentially referring to the airplanes that dropped the bombs. Enough of the past. Let us talk about shocking Nostradamus predictions for Donald Trump. Nostradamus. Predictions for Donald Trump. How would you feel to learn that there is a living Nostradamus today? No, we are not referring to the French Michel de Nostradamus. We are talking about Alan Lichtman, popularly known as the Nostradamus of U.S. presidential elections. He has an outstanding record of correctly predicting 9 out of the last 10 U.S. presidential races. With his systematic and data-driven approach, Lichtman is now gearing up to forecast the upcoming election between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. In case you've never heard about him, Lichtman is a seasoned history professor at American University in Washington, and he started his election prediction journey over 40 years ago.
And while Donald Trump acknowledged my prediction of his win last time, he didn't understand the deeper meaning of my system.
In 1981, while serving as a visiting scholar at the California Institute of Tech, he partnered with Vladimir Kilis-Borak, a prominent earthquake prediction expert with a strong interest in American politics. Their collaboration created the renowned 13 Keys to the White House, an innovative method that examines presidential elections through the perspective of stability versus disruption. The 13 Keys approach blends historical stability patterns with contemporary political dynamics and has become a fundamental tool in election forecasting. Lichtman jokingly acknowledged that he discovered the keys by accident. He said, "I'd love to tell you I developed my system by running my eyes in the archives by deep contemplation. But if I were to say that, to quote the late great Richard Nixon, that would be wrong." But how exactly do the 13 keys work? You're about to get blown away.
The keys to the White House are the world's only do-it-yourself prediction system. You all can now become election forecasters using the 13 keys.
The 13 keys are valid false questions designed to gauge the incumbent party's chances. These keys assess various factors, including economic conditions, social unrest, significant policy changes, and the candidate's charisma. If 6 or more keys are false, it indicates that the incumbent party is likely to lose power. Unlike the French Nostradamus, these are not mystical prophecies, but a data-driven approach. These keys also consider factors like the party's performance in the midterms, the presence of a strong challenger, the state of the economy, and public perception of the incumbent leader and foreign policy. By analyzing these fundamental aspects, Lichtman's model has correctly predicted every presidential election since 1984, making it a powerful tool for understanding the dynamics that influence U.S. elections. Next, we'll reveal the prophecy of the Nostradamus of U.S. elections for 2024. How accurate is the Nostradamus of U.S. presidential elections? Let us briefly walk down memory lane to understand how accurate Lichtman has been. When Lichtman and Kilis-Borak published their findings in an academic journal, they caught the attention of an Associated Press science reporter. This led to a Washington Post article titled, "Odd Couple Discovers Keys to the White House." The public was thrilled with the theories, but wanted to see Lichtman put it to practical application. An opportunity finally came in April 1982. Lichtman applied the keys in the Washingtonian magazine to predict that despite the economic recession, low approval ratings, and Ronald Reagan's advanced age, he would secure re-election 2 years later. The president's response to his prediction will shock you. Lichtman was immediately invited to the White House after he published his prediction. He met several officials there, including then Vice President George H.W. Bush.
In 1988, as late as May and June, George H.W. Bush was trailing his opponent, Mike Dukakis, by 18 percentage points. He went on to win handily.
Atwater inquired about the outcome if Reagan chose not to run for re-election. Lichtman suggested that the incumbent party would lose several critical keys, including the essential factor of incumbent charisma. Lichtman's analysis was precise. Without Reagan's charisma, the Republican candidate, George H.W. Bush, would struggle. Lichtman compared Bush's charisma to a New Jersey shopping center on a Sunday morning. Not inspiring. Lichtman, an aide at the White House, was visibly relaxed after hearing this assessment. This prediction proved true. Despite trailing his Democratic opponent in the polls by a significant margin early in the 1988 campaign, Bush ultimately won the election. Lichtman attributed Bush's victory to his ability to capitalize on the positive aspects of Reagan's legacy, including peace, economic prosperity, domestic stability, and progress in relations with the Soviet Union. Voters seem to want to see these trends continue under Bush's leadership. Despite his successful predictions, Lichtman faced criticism from some academics. These critics argued that his system relied too heavily on subjective judgment, a significant flaw in scientific prediction. Lichtman defended his approach, pointing out that his keys were clearly defined and based on historical analysis. He argued that historians routinely make judgments based on evidence, and his system was no different. His successful track record of predictions served as further validation of his approach. Lichtman's persistence paid off. Over the next 15 to 20 years, attitudes within the academic forecasting community shifted. As complex mathematical models proved unreliable, forecasters began to see the value of combining statistical analysis with informed judgment, similar to Lichtman's approach. His keys to the White House system gained popularity, and Lichtman became a sought-after speaker. He presented his ideas at forecasting conferences, wrote articles in academic journals, and even shared his insights with the CIA on how his system could be applied to foreign elections. Remarkably, his predictions continued to be accurate. Despite his high approval ratings following the Gulf War, Lichtman predicted that George H.W. Bush would be a one-term president, which led many top Democrats to forego challenging him. Then, Lichtman received a call from Kay Goss, special assistant to Governor Bill Clinton, in Little Rock, Arkansas. "Are you saying George Bush can be beaten in 1992? She asked. Lichtman confirmed his prediction. Clinton won the Democratic primary and ultimately defeated Bush in the presidential election.
Both of you ran for Congress the first time you ran, and you both lost. So you have that in common, but after you lost the first time, you were trying to beat an incumbent congressman, and you lost. Did you say, "I'm out of politics"?
The Clintons have been big fans of the keys ever since, Lichtman notes. Despite his remarkable success in predicting 9 out of 10 past American elections, Lichtman failed one, or as he claimed, his predictions didn't fail. Instead, the election was rigged. Let's take a closer look at this shocking failure. Why did Nostradamus Lichtman fail the Al Gore prediction? Lichtman faced the most stormy years of his prediction career in the year 2000, when he predicted a victory for Democratic Vice President Al Gore over George W. Bush, the Republican governor of Texas. While Gore won the popular vote, he lost the Electoral College by a narrow margin. Lichtman, however, maintains that his prediction was correct. He claimed that the election was stolen. According to him, the actual votes indicated that Al Gore should have won decisively, but many ballots cast by black voters, who were overwhelmingly in favor of Gore, were discarded. He compiled his findings in a report to the United States Commission on Civil Rights, stating that 1 out of every 9 to 10 ballots cast by black voters was discarded, in contrast to 1 out of 50 ballots cast by white voters. He also explained that most of these discarded votes were not the infamous hanging chads, but overvotes. Black voters had been told to punch in Gore and write in Gore, just to be sure, and those ballots were eventually discarded. He added that political scientists have since examined the election and verified his findings. Based on the voters' intent, he argued, Al Gore should have won by tens of thousands of votes. He added that he firmly believed he was correct about the 2000 election. At the very least, he argued, no definitive prediction could be deemed entirely right or wrong, allowing for arguments on both sides. He maintained that he and many others stood by his record, asserting that he was accurate in all 10 predictions. However, even if one were to argue that he was only right 9 out of 10 times, he pointed out that this was still an impressive track record. Before we reveal what this modern Nostradamus has predicted for Donald Trump in 2024, let us look at his prediction for the 2016 elections that shocked Americans. Nostradamus Lichtman's Trump prediction for the 2016 election. Perhaps Lichtman's most striking prediction, which defied polls, commentators, and conventional wisdom, was that Donald Trump, a former reality television star with zero political or military experience, would achieve an improbable victory over a former Secretary of State and First Lady Hillary Clinton in 2016. How did he know? He explained that the 6th critical key was the contest key, which was Bernie Sanders' challenge against Hillary Clinton. Because no incumbent was running for re-election, the Democrats couldn't benefit from the advantages typically associated with having an incumbent candidate. The party also performed poorly in the 2014 midterms, losing another key. The absence of a significant domestic achievement after the Affordable Care Act and the lack of a major foreign policy success following the killing of bin Laden also contributed to the tally. There were just enough keys, he said. It was not an easy call. After the election, Lichtman received a copy of the Washington Post interview, where he made the prediction. On it was written in a Sharpie pen, "Congrats, Professor. Good call. Donald J. Trump." However, in the same conversation, Lichtman also forecasted, again accurately,
There's a real theory behind this. And the theory is presidential elections are fundamentally referenda on the performance of the party holding the White House.
that Trump would one day face impeachment. His predictions extended to 2020 as well, with Trump's struggles in handling the coronavirus pandemic. The pandemic is what did him in. He congratulated me for predicting him, but he didn't grasp the significance of the keys. The essence of the keys is that governance, not just campaigning, determines outcomes. Instead of addressing the pandemic substantively, as we've seen, he believed he could talk his way out of it, and that ultimately led to his downfall. In 2020, Lichtman presented the keys as one of 3 classic prediction models at the American Political Science Association. Now, we've come to the most epic moment of the video. What has Nostradamus Lichtman predicted for Trump in 2024? Nostradamus Lichtman's Trump prediction for the 2024 election. In recent months, Lichtman has been invited to deliver keynote addresses at Asian and Brazilian financial conferences, the Oxford Union, and J.P. Morgan. As another election approaches, he remains unconvinced by polls indicating Trump is leading Biden.
I'm about to reference, but it does show Donald Trump with a steady lead in a head-to-head rematch against President Biden, putting Trump at 49%, Biden at 43%.
During the 2024 presidential election, Nostradamus said he had not yet made a final prediction. He reminded his viewers of his model for 13 keys to the White House, which have been correct since 1984 to 10 elections in a row. He added that a lot would have to go wrong for Joe Biden to lose this election because Biden is now down by just 2 keys. A recent Reuters survey shows that U.S. voters view Trump as more favorable to the economy than President Biden. In this 3-day poll, 41% preferred Trump's economic policies, while 34% favored Biden's.
Who did you pick for 2024? Who is leading your score sheet?
Well, I haven't made a final prediction yet.
Okay.
Because things are still very fluid on my 13 keys to the White House.
The remaining participants were uncertain or felt neither candidate had a superior economic stance. However, Mr. Lichtman cautioned that early polls should be taken seriously. Early polls have zero predictive value. They are momentary snapshots. For example, they indicate, if the elections were held today, this is where the candidates stand. But the election is not being held today, so these polls are not useful for prediction. Early polls often lead you astray, Mr. Lichtman told NDTV. That's not all. He also reminded people of the accuracy of his forecast of Donald Trump's 2016 victory, despite contrary poll results in media spaces. He also mentioned the 1988 election when George H.W. Bush overcame a 17-point deficit against Mike Dukakis to win with a 25-point swing. These examples demonstrate why it's essential to look beyond the polls and pundits and focus on the broader picture as indicated by the keys, he added. We expect Lichtman to predict his final 2024 presidential election in early August. He points out that Biden already holds the incumbency key, and after easily defeating token challengers in the Democratic primary, he also has the contest key. That's 2 keys off the top. This means 6 more keys would need to turn against him to predict his defeat. A lot would have to go wrong for Biden to lose. It is also important to mention that Lichtman places no importance on running mate selections and has never altered his forecast in response to an October surprise. However, he admits that no predictive model is entirely immune to shocking events. But does it mean his model might fail? Speaking during the week when a jury was seated for Trump's criminal trial in New York concerning a hush money payment to an adult film actress,
it appears that an appeal by Trump for the New York criminal trial could come just days before the November election.
Lichtman explained that his keys to predicting election outcomes are grounded in historical data and trends. These keys have been developed broadly, from 1860 to the present day, prospectively up to 1984. This historical foundation allows the keys to capture and reflect significant shifts and developments in various aspects of society, including the economy, demographics, and political landscape. By examining patterns and trends over this extensive period, the keys provide a robust framework for understanding and predicting electoral outcomes, or how historical context influences contemporary elections. But he also quickly added that his model, like all human models, is not immune to errors. What Lichtman said concerning the possibility of failing is enlightening. While acknowledging the potential limitations of his predictive model, he noted that the current American election has elements that fall outside historical scope. Specifically, he refers to the situation where former President Trump, a major party candidate, is undergoing a criminal trial. He suggests that if this candidate is convicted, a scenario he considers likely, it could significantly disrupt or scramble the usual factors that his keys consider when predicting election outcomes. Simply put, his model does not capture the potential effect of Trump's conviction or potential committal to prison. This shows that Lichtman's keys have historically been reliable in forecasting election results based on established patterns. It seems this will put him in a very tight corner in predicting the winner of this year's election. Millions of people will be on edge come the night of November 5th. After 4 decades of engaging in election prediction, Lichtman will have yet another period to experience anxiety. It's nerve-wracking because many would be happy seeing me fail, he acknowledges. And if he does? I'm human, he admits. It doesn't mean my system's wrong. Nothing is perfect in the human world. Back to where we are coming from. Does the French Nostradamus have any prophecy for Donald Trump in 2024? French Nostradamus's Trump prophecies for 2024. Keen Nostradamus readers believe he also made prophecies regarding Trump for the year 2024. In this prophecy, Nostradamus speaks of a false trumpet that conceals madness, causing changes in laws and standards. The interpretation suggests that this false trumpet represents Donald Trump, whose controversial actions and policies during the first term led to significant shifts in domestic and international relations in the United States. The mention of Byzantium symbolizes the United States, hinting at a transformation in its governance and policies. The prophecy also mentioned Egypt and the withdrawal of a mandate. Nostradamus readers said this suggests Trump will win the election and make radical changes to regulations and standards, particularly in financial matters. The prophecy also mentions that the ruler will shake with discord and have a bloody mouth swimming with blood. This denotes the chaos and conflict associated with Trump's presidency, including his divisive words and aggressive approach to politics. Overall, the prophecy is interpreted as a warning that Trump's second-term presidency will be entirely deception and recklessness for the nation and the world. Another Nostradamus prophecy that seems to speak about Trump's potential second-term victory is when he mentioned that a great shameless brawler will be elected governor of the army. They explained that the term shameless brawler aligns with Trump's aggressive and reckless demeanor, which has always defined his political career. Do you remember the riot after the 2020 election? His election as governor of the army is interpreted as a metaphor for assuming political leadership over America, reflecting Trump's role as commander-in-chief of the United States Armed Forces. Nostradamus also said the leader would cause a broken bridge and a city to faint from fear. This suggests that Trump's leadership will have a disruptive and unsettling impact on the United States. This may include his approach to foreign policy and national security. This interpretation calls for fear over the potential consequences of Trump's bold and assertive actions on both domestic and international fronts. The prophecy cautions about the dangers of unchecked power and aggressive leadership. It is now up to you, our viewers, to judge what the two Nostradamus have predicted about Trump. Kindly share your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you for joining us today. Please like the video. If you love content like this, click the subscribe button for more.